Hi, and welcome to part 4 of this video guide on how to build a contact management application with Caspio. In this video, which makes up the bulk of the video content, we'll learn how to create all the forms and reports using Caspio's point-and-click builder. Let's take a look. If you have been following along with all of the other videos from part 2 and part 3, by now you should know how to build all the tables that our application will need, how to create all the views to filter out the data, and also how to build the authentications, which is going to allow us to password protect our applications. What we need to do next is build out all the functionality in terms of all the forms, reports that our application will need. And to do that in Caspio, you need to go to Data Pages. Data Pages are application interfaces that embed seamlessly into your own website. So when you build a data page, let's say a submission form, Caspio is going to give you a snippet of code, and all you have to do is copy and paste that code into your own website. It's just like embedding a YouTube video, same concept, copy, paste, embed. And you'll see in part 5 of this video guide how I go about deploying my application into a Weebly website builder. The next thing that I want to do is to create folders. Folders help us stay organized inside our application, and we use folders to organize our data pages. And the way I want you to use the folders is for every user group that your application has, I want you to create a folder for it. So for example, our application is going to have a manager user role. We're also going to have an employee user role. And I also have one more folder that I have a need for, which is a shared folder, because some data pages that I create are going to be shared between the employees and managers. So I'm just going to call this shared. Very simple. And now I can open up each one of these folders and I can begin building my data pages by clicking on the link here at the very top. And when you click on this link, this is going to launch Caspio's point-and-click data page wizard. And these are all the different types of interfaces that you can develop. So you can build input forms to add data to your database. You can build update forms to update records within the table. You can also do password recovery. So if you want your customers or your employees to automatically reset their own password via email, you can build this data page type. You can build different reports to output the data. Anything from a tabular format all the way down to a pivot table. Pivot tables are very powerful because you can have fields on the left-hand side and you can have fields across the top. And then you can do calculations here in the middle in aggregate. Calendars are also very powerful if you want to build, let's say, an event management system or appointment tracking system. You can display all of your appointments in a calendar layout. You can also build charts for metrics to be able to visually see what your data represents. And you can also build HTML data pages. So if you're a little bit more tech savvy, you have a bit more of a technical acumen, you can build more robust and sophisticated applications using an HTML data page type. For now, the first data page that I'm going to build is a very simple submission form. I want both the managers and employees to have the ability to add new contacts. So I'm going to select submission form, hit next. As for my data source, I want my contacts table to be selected because when I submit that form, I want that data to go into my contacts table. Let's give this data page a name. I'm going to call this add new contact. And for my style, Caspio is going to give you some preloaded styles. This is all about the aesthetics, the look and feel of your form, meaning you can have a different color of the label, different color of the field, buttons, so you can either choose one of our preloaded styles that we give you, or you can fully customize your own style by going into this object. We also give you access to CSS, so if you're a little bit more technical, you can manipulate the CSS for even more aesthetically pleasing applications. I'm going to choose this style that we have blue here at the top. Then I'm going to choose my localization. So we give you different types of localizations that you can apply to your applications as well, depending on the region. So this will affect the date format, the currency, and some other text that's driven by the system. I'm going to stick with English. The next step is to apply access and security. All you need to do is check this box, and then you can choose who's going to have access to this application or to this form. Do we want everyone to have access to it? Only the employees? Or only the manager? In this case, I think everyone should have the ability to add new contacts. So I'm going to choose that authentication. This is actually coming from this object here on the left-hand side. I'm going to hit next. And now it's asking me what fields do I want to include on my submission form. In this case, I'm going to move all the fields to the right, including the foreign key, which is the user ID. I'm going to hit next. For my user ID field, what I want to be able to do is stamp the user's ID inside the contacts table. This is going to tell me which one of my users is actually submitting the contact. And there's a very easy way to do this in Caspio. We don't need to have this field be exposed. All I'm going to do is make this field hidden. Okay, and then on load, receive the authentication field, and we can look back into the users table to grab that person's ID. So depending on who's logged in, we verify the ID, and upon submission of this form, we are going to stamp that user's ID in the contacts table. The rest of the fields I'm going to leave as is. I'm not going to make any modifications, even though I could. I could select the first name, and I can choose a different form element. Do I want this to be a text field, text area, radio button? You have a slew of options here on how you can modify each one of your fields here on the left-hand side. But we're going to keep things simple, just because the whole point of this video is to show you how to build these functionalities in Caspio. But just keep in mind that in Caspio, you can modify the form as much as you want, but by default, I'm going to leave everything as a text field, just to speed things up and save on time. Once you're finished, go ahead and click Save or Finish to save your changes. And here's my very first data page. I need to build 8 more. At this point, I can edit the data page again if I'm not happy with the look and feel, or I can preview the data page to see what this looks like. And the first thing you'll notice is that we have a login screen applied to our submission form. I'll have to log in first before I can see that form. And one of my users in my table is raj@company.com with the password test. And once I log in, I'm able to see that form. So now you can see how we can apply the authentication to our form, and only the people that exist in my user table will be able to log in and view the form. Let's continue building the rest of the data pages. I'll go back. The next data page that I want to build is a very simple update profile page. I want my employees to be able to update their profile. So if at any time they want to be able to update their password, I want to give them that ability. So let's build a brand new data page here. And I'm going to choose to build a single record update, because when I log in as Raj, I want to be able to update just my own information. So that's why I choose single record update. I'm going to hit next. This needs to have my users table be my data source because Raj's information exists inside that table. It's not inside the contacts table or the log history table. It's inside the users table. Let's give this a name, update profile. I'm going to choose the same style, blue, and same localization. And once again, I need to restrict access to just my employee. Not all access. If I wanted my managers to have the same capability to update their profile, then in this case, I may actually choose all access. But for this application, this use case, I'm going to choose just to give my employees the ability to update their profile. Hit next. It needs to find Raj's record through a secure ID. Okay, so identity field in the authentication is going to be the user's ID. And the matching field in the current data source is also user ID. So when you match these two up correctly, when Raj logs in, he's going to be able to see just the information belonging to his ID. I'm going to hit next. And really, it's up to you what information you want Raj to be able to update. You can choose to update the name, the email. In this case, I just want Raj to be able to update his password. I'm going to hit next. I don't need to make any modifications here. I'm going to leave that as a text field. You can also choose to show password strength if you'd like. You have that option. And I definitely want to require current password validation because in order for him to change his password, he needs to input his existing password first and then change it to something else. At this point, I can click Finish to save my changes. And now when I hit Preview, since I'm already logged in as Raj, I should be able to see that for him and be able to update my password inside the profile. So we have 2 data pages completed. Let's build 7 more. I'm going to close the Preview tab, go back to my data pages. And maybe the next data page that we can build is the ability for employees to be able to view their own contacts. I'm going to set up a brand new data page. go down to Reports, and let's go with the tabular format. I'm going to hit Next. In my data source, if you guessed the contacts table, you're correct. In order for Raj to see the data, all of the contact information resides inside that table. So this needs to be my data source. I'm going to call this View My Contacts. Again, I'm going to use the same style blue, same localization, and restrict access to the employees. The reason why I don't choose all access is because managers are going to be able to see a different type of report. So it's going to be a completely different data page. Managers are going to be able to reassign contacts to different employees, but my employees don't have that capability. So in this case, it's going to be two different data pages. And this is why for this one, I only apply the employee level login. But when I build the report for the management, I will apply the manager login to that specific data page. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on. I do want to have the ability to search data, and I want the results to appear directly underneath my search form, and I want the results to appear on the initial load. So when I load the browser, I want to be able to see the search form, and I want to see the contacts directly underneath the search form. For this data page, I need to apply record level security because I only want my employees to see their own contacts based on their own unique ID. So when I log in as Raj, I just want to be able to see the contacts that are linked to my specific ID. We're going to hit Next. And now we need to modify our search fields. So let's first include the search fields that we wish to have. And just to keep things simple, I'm just going to have first and last name to be able to find information based on the contact name. Of course, you can include other search fields if you want to. This is completely up to you. I'm going to hit Next. Once again, to keep things simple, I'm going to choose comparison type contains. If you leave it as equal, that means you have to know the exact first name that you're looking for, down to a letter. But if you choose contains, it works kind of like keyword search. If I type in letter A and click search, it's going to return all the first names that contain letter A. So let's apply the same behavior to my last name. I'm going to use contains, and then very simple, hit Next. Now, what fields do you want to use for the results page? For the results page, let's have maybe the full name of the contact, title, company name, phone, email. The rest of these fields we can include in the details view. Our results page is really just supposed to be the summary of our data, just to be able to see a quick glance from what's inside a table. But then if I'm interested in seeing more details for that contact, I can always click on the details link to reveal more information. So let's stick with these fields for the results page and hit Next. Do I want my contacts to be able to edit data from the results page? At this point, let's not do that. Let's only enable editing in the details view. We're going to hit Next. On the results page, we need to include what's called an HTML block. And I'm going to move this HTML block all the way at the bottom. You can position it anywhere you want. And inside this HTML block, we need to write a very basic hyperlink. That when I click on that link, it's going to take me to the details view. And it's very easy to do that in Caspio. All you need to do is name your link. Let's just call it contact details. Highlight the text. Click on this link button and input your destination URL. So in other words, when I click on this text, where do I want the user to go? For now, we're going to just very simply input a placeholder, and then you'll see how in part 5 of this video guide, once I actually start deploying this to the web, how I grab the URL and replace the placeholder. As my placeholder for now, I'm just going to put google.com. And one more thing that we need to do here, which is very important. We have to pass the contact ID to the details page. The reason why we have to do that is in order for me to view the contact's details, I have to receive that contact ID in order to know which details to display. So now we're going to talk about passing parameters as a query string value, and a little bit of syntax is needed here. Just add a question mark to initiate the string, then you give your parameter a name. We're going to call this CID, which stands for contact ID. You can call it whatever you want. After that, you add an equal sign, and then using this insert button, you're going to select contact ID and click OK. What does this mean? When I click on this text, and you'll see in part 5 how this all comes together. When I click on this text, I'm going to go to the details page, but in the midst of going to that details page, I'm going to be passing this contact's ID inside the URL. So the URL is going to serve like a transportation device or a vehicle or a vessel that's going to carry the ID to the next page. And on that subsequent page, we're going to receive that ID. So it's just passing and receiving, pitching and catching. That's the idea. For now, click OK, and you will see how that becomes a clickable link. It's not going to work at this very moment because I'm using a placeholder text google.com. That's not really where I want the users to go. But once I start deploying this to the web, you will see how I replace google.com with the actual link that we're going to use. Let me hit next. Let's display 25 contacts per page. You can edit these options as much as you want. Let's hit next. And I don't really need a details page for this report because I'm going to have that link that I click on to take me to a separate data page. For now, just put no details and click finish to save your changes. And let's take a look. I'm going to preview this. And what you're going to notice is no records found. Why do we see no records found? Because my contacts table at the moment doesn't have any data inside it. You can double check that if you want to at any time. So if I go back to my account and I right click on tables and open this up in a new tab, and I open up my contacts table, you'll see that it's an empty table. But let's make one submission very quickly. And we can do that because I have the contact form. So if I go to my shared folder now, and if I preview the form, I'm still logged in as Raj. I can make a quick submission. Let's say Kelly Smith. That's actually the name of my user. Let's add somebody else in here. So we'll just say Mary Thornton, title CEO, company maybe Yahoo. And the other information is not really required. So let's hit submit. Not only are you going to see that inside your table now, so if I refresh my table, you're going to be able to see that submission. But if I go back to my report now, let me go back to my data pages, and I view my contacts, Rod should now be able to see Mary Thornton listed inside that report. I have this link created, so when I click on that link, it's going to take me to a web page where I'm going to be able to see the details of that contact. All right, let's continue building the rest of our data pages. I'm going to go back to my account. And this time what we can build is a similar data page to this one, but it needs to be accessed by the manager. So I'm going to make a copy of it. And with Caspio, it's very easy to do that. Just duplicate it by clicking on this, hit save. And now you've created an identical data page. I'm going to move this one by clicking on more, clicking on move, selecting my manager folder, which is this one here. Click move. And now you can see how that data page exists inside this folder. Now I do need to make modifications to this data page. It's not done yet because it's an exact clone of the one that I just created. So I need to click on edit here and make a few modifications. Let's hit next. First, I'm going to rename the data page, manage contacts. Use the same style blue, and I'm going to apply a different authentication this time for managers. I'm going to hit next. There is no need for record level security. As a manager, I should be able to see all the contacts within the table. There's no restriction here. I'm the highest level user. I want to be able to see all the contacts that are being managed by all of the employees. Going to hit next. And on this screen, I'm going to include the user ID. Why do I want to include the user ID? Because I want to be able to quickly see a dropdown and select the employee, and then when I click search, I'm able to see all the contacts that belong to that respective employee. So I include the user ID field, I hit next. I don't need to modify these two search fields. It's completely identical to the report that we just created, but I do want to modify the user ID field. And what you'll notice is that Caspio automatically created a dropdown for me. It's linking to the user table, and it's going to display the name inside my dropdown, but behind the scenes, it's always going to be the user ID. Now, one slight modification that I like to make personally is instead of just lookup table, I like to do both, custom values and lookup table. So I choose both, and under custom values, I'm going to say search all. Delete the value because this doesn't really exist in my table. This needs to carry a null value. Because when I leave that option selected in my dropdown and I click search, it's going to return everything from the table. Unless I specify inside the lookup table as my dropdown. Okay, let's move on, hit next. Now, what information do I want to display on the results page? So here I'm going to also include the user ID. I'd like to enable some kind of a grouping effect that I can group all of the contacts based on my employee. I think that's going to look very nice. Let's hit next. On this screen, what I want to do is enable bulk edit, because I want the management to be able to quickly select a lot of the contacts, and using bulk edit, which is more like a mass update feature, we can quickly assign these selected contacts to a specific employee. We're going to hit next. On this screen, I'm going to move my user ID field at the very top. I'm going to rename this label to say employee. And I want to group my data and have a collapsible group. So I'm grouping all of the contacts based on the employee name. We're going to keep the HTML block. This is all going to remain the same. I'm just going to be renaming that placeholder link with a different link for my managers, and you'll see how I do that in part 5 of the video guide. Let's see if we need to make any additional changes. I'm going to hit next. This is my bulk edit screen. Okay, bulk edit. The only field that I really need to see on this screen is the user ID field. And this is going to become a dropdown for me to just choose a different employee. I'm going to rename the label to say employee. And then I'm going to remove all the other fields that we have in the bulk edit screen. And that's very easy. You just remove them by clicking on the X button. And just 2 more. And you'll see in just a second what this looks like. I'm going to hit next now. Let's display 25 contacts per page. No details page, and click finish. So now when I hit preview, I believe that my manager's name in my table is Mary. If you ever forget what your user's credentials are, you can always go back to your account, right-click on the table, open it, and then go inside the user table. And my manager's name is actually Sarah. So sarah@company.com, and I had test for everyone. So let's go back here, and let's log in as Sarah. And now Sarah can log in, and what you'll notice the difference here. Sarah has the ability to search based on the employee names using this dropdown. And I can quickly select all the contacts like this using bulk edit. And when I click on edit, I get this pop-up window where I can now choose to reassign these contacts to a different employee. And if I choose to reassign this to Kelly, I hit update. And next time Raj logs in, he's not going to be able to see Mary Thornton anymore because me as Sarah, who is the manager, I reassigned this contact to a different person. But let's not do that because I do need to be able to log in as Raj since we're using that as the main user for the application. I cancel out of that. Let me close the preview tab and let's go back into our account and continue building our data pages. So far we have created 4 different data pages. For this application to work, I need 5 more. Next, let's go ahead and create the ability for managers to add users and manage existing users. So I can close these 2 folders for now and continue working on the management side. So let's build a new data page here. And let's go with the submission form. I want to be able to add new employees to my user table. So select this option, hit next, and then your data source is the users table. Let's give it a name. Add new employee. Again, I'm going to use the same style blue, same localization, and make sure you restrict access to your management only, because only the manager level user has the ability to add employees. We're going to hit next. I need all my fields in the form. Hit next again. And now let's modify the fields. The name field is going to be a required field. We must have a name inside the user table. The email field is automatically required because we made this field unique inside the table. So it's going to be required by default. In this use case, I'm actually going to have the management create the password on behalf of the employee, that initial password. But there's workarounds around that. If you don't want the management to be able to create the password on behalf of the employee, you can send an email to the employee with the link for them to create their own password. Again, you have some options here. You can show password strength if you want. You can also have a minimum strength required. If you require to have a stronger password, you can choose from fair, good to strong. I'm not going to do that. For the role field, here I'm going to create a very simple drop-down or a radio button for management to be able to specify if this employee is going to have manager level access or employee level access. And I'm going to quickly create my drop-down and input some custom values here. And I'm going to go with choose role, maybe as the first option in my drop-down. Make sure you delete the value. This is not going to be stored inside the table. And then let's create our two options here very quickly. So they can either be a manager or employee. And finally, we have login status. So here I'm going to leave this as a checkbox, and I'm going to add some display text that's going to appear after my checkbox text. And I'm going to call this check to allow login access. Meaning if I check the box on that submission form and I hit submit, this employee will immediately be able to log in. But I'm giving the manager that option because let's say there's some pending paperwork that needs to be completed. I'm not ready to give them access yet, but I still want to add them to the table, and at a later time, I can enable and make them active, which is completely fine. So I'm going to leave it like this, click finish, and let's take a look at this data page now. Ooh, I didn't place it in my manager folder, so let me make sure I move that. Click move, expand the app, and select my manager folder. And there is my data page. So if I preview now, I'm still logged in as Sarah, by the way. Now Sarah can see this form, and I can add a new user to my users table. I can choose the role, I can allow immediate access, and I can input the name, email, and password of the new hired employee that's going to be part of the team. Let me close the preview tab. And next data page that I want to build is the ability for managers to be able to manage users. So let's build a brand new data page. Go down to reports. Let's go with the tabular format. We'll stick with that. Hit next. My data source needs to be my users table. Let's give it a name. Manage users. Again, I'm going to use the same style of blue, and I'm going to restrict access to, if you guessed this correctly, the manager login. Give yourself a little tap on the shoulder. You're correct, because only the manager should be able to log in and manage existing users. I don't want other employees to be able to do that. Let's hit next. Do I need a search form for this report? In this case, I don't really need to build one because my table only has 3 employees in it. If you had a user table that had, let's say, 1,000 employees or 5,000 employees, in that case, it makes sense to build a search form so you can quickly find that employee. But I'm only listing 3. I should be able to find them easily. So I'm just going to filter my data. No need for RLS because management should be able to see all of the employees. We're going to hit next. I'm not going to filter based on any one of my fields. Let's leave the screen as is and continue. And now, what fields do you want to include in the results page? So let's have the name of our employee, their email, their role, and login status, and perhaps date created, and continue. Do I want the ability to edit their data directly from the results page? You can if you want to. Again, this is all completely up to you, but I want to show you how we can create a details page using a data page wizard in Caspio, the one where you're not passing the parameter via the URL. So I'm going to hit next here. Here are my results page fields. I'm going to keep this the way it is. The only change that I can make here under login status, we can customize and format the way the yes or no is displayed. So if I click edit here, custom, yes and no, I want that to be custom text. So if it's yes, I want that to read active. If it's no, I want that to read inactive. And I'm going to simply apply a different color. So if it's yes, I want that to be maybe a light green. And if it's no, I want that to be red. Meaning if they're not able to log in, I want this inactive text to be red. But if they can log in, I want that to be green. I'm going to hit OK and continue. Let's display 25 per page. We only have 3 records inside this table. Continue. Let's enable a details page. But instead of having a default action link to take me to my details page, I'm going to actually choose the name of my employee to be a clickable link to take me into the details view. Let's continue. And now, what information do you want to display in the details view? Let's have all the information. Hit next. And let's modify all the details page fields. So as a manager, if I want the ability to update your name, I'm going to choose text field as opposed to display only. I also want to make sure this is a required field because if you make an update, You definitely want to enforce to make sure something is entered into that field before you can make the update. You don't want to leave it empty or blank. Email, I'm going to choose to be able to update the email as well. Instead of text field, why don't we go with a special element email? It checks for formatting issues, so it ensures that you have an @ symbol and a period afterwards. Do I now want to be able to update your password? No, I really don't need this field in the details view because my employees have the ability to update their own password using the update profile data page that we created a few minutes ago. So let's leave that out of the details page. For the role field, I want this to become a dropdown, and I should have the ability to demote or promote my employees based on the role field. Okay, so if somebody was an employee before, I want to promote them to a manager status, I should be able to, with the simple dropdown, make that change. Login status, I definitely want this to be a checkbox. I'm going to keep that same text. Check to allow login access. Again, instead of deleting somebody from the table, which goes against best practice, you always want to archive your data, and you want to control their login status with a simple checkbox. If you don't want somebody to log in anymore, you can uncheck the box, hit update, and their account will be deactivated. And date created, maybe we can move this to the top and leave that as display only. And that's it. From here, you can click finish to save your changes. And let's take a look. We're going to hit preview. And I should be able to see 3 entries inside this report, all 3 of our users. You can see how I made the name field clickable. You can see how they're all active. Now, if I want to disable or deactivate Kelly's account, I can go into the details page, and from here I can uncheck this box, hit update, and you will now see how it's in red. This means that Kelly is not going to be able to log into the application anymore. Let's reactivate her account. I can also promote her if I want to. Hit update, and once again, her account is active, meaning she's going to be able to log in. Let's go back to our account and let's see how many data pages we have so far. We have a total of 6 data pages. You can expand all of your folders to be able to find them. We only have 3 more data pages left to build. So now let's build a details page inside my shared folder. So brand new data page. Go down to reports and select this data page type called details. We're going to hit next. Needs to have the data source be the contacts table. Let's give it a name. I'm going to call this view details. Again, I'm going to use the same style, blue, same localization, and restrict access to everyone because both the employees and managers are going to be able to see the same data page where they can edit the contact details. We're going to hit next. I don't need a search form here. I'm going to filter my data. No need for record level security because we're going to be passing the contact ID. So if you recall from a couple of minutes ago when I built those reports, I used the question mark CID equals sign and I was able to pass the contact ID when I clicked on that link. Now this data page is going to receive that contact ID. So I have to include the contact ID field as my filtering field. We're going to hit next, and now let's learn how we can receive that information. So you go into the Advanced tab, you say Receive Value or Parameter. Externally, external parameters are the ones that you pass via the URL. And you'll see in part 5 of this video guide how it all comes together. It's actually very easy, and it's going to be really easy to understand exactly what we're doing here. My parameter name, I called it CID, so this needs to have the same name, CID. And value must be required. Meaning you have to pass the value in the URL, the correct value, in order to view the details of that contact. Let's hit next. And now whatever fields you want to include in the details view, it's completely up to you. Let's have first name, last name, maybe title, and let's just include all of these fields and hit next. Now, do you want to be able to edit data in the details view? Yes, we're given the ability for all of the employees and managers to edit the contact details. So what you can do very quickly is just switch from display only to any one of these elements that we provide. And just to speed things up, I'm going to choose text field. And I'm not going to make all of the fields editable, but just a few, maybe up to the phone number field. And then when done, we click finish. So here's my details page. Once again, I need to make sure I place this in the right folder. So let me click on Move and select the shared folder. And we should be able to find that data page. Now, the whole idea here is when the managers are looking at this contacts, we have a link in this report that takes me to the details page. And when we click on that link, it's going to open up this data page so we can view the details of that contact. And the reason why we're going to be able to see the contact's details is because we passed the contact ID, and now this data page is receiving the contact ID. Again, it's all going to make sense once we start talking about deployment in part 5 of this video guide. All right, we have 2 more data pages to build. This time we're going to build a submission form to add a log. That's also going to be inside the shared folder. So let's build a new data page here. Submission form, we hit next. And my table here now needs to be the logs table, because when I create a new log, that information needs to be stored inside this table here. Let's call this add log. We're going to use the same style, same localization, restrict access to everyone, because everyone will have the ability to create logs. Let's move on. I need all my fields on the form, so let's move all of these fields to the right, hit next. All right, so now let's also talk about this form because it also needs to receive the contact ID. So it's not just the details view that's receiving the contact ID. We also have the field in this table. Okay, the first thing that you want to do here is just for now, let's keep this as a text field. Go into the Advanced tab, and then make sure you receive the value externally, and your parameter name needs to be exactly the same, which was CID. All right, because my submission form, this form that I'm currently building, and my contact details are both going to be on the same web page, we're going to embed them both on the same web page. Both of those 2 data pages need to receive the contact ID from the results page. Remember how in the results page we said google.com, $CID equals, and then we added the field? When we click on the link, we're going to pass the contact ID. Both of the 2 data pages that we just created are going to be receiving that contact ID. So that's why we say receive the value externally and have the same parameter name. I recommend in the beginning just to leave it as a text field so that you can see how that ID is passed correctly. And then once you see that the ID is passed into that field, you can come back to this data page and make that field hidden. But for now, we're going to leave it as a text field. What about user ID? So user ID depends on who's logged inside the application. That's how we're going to receive this value. And it's very easy to do. Once again, you go into the Advanced tab, but before you do that, just flip this back to a text field. It's a little bit easier to read. So if you go into the Advanced tab, you receive the value. And this time, we're not receiving the value externally via the query string parameter. We are receiving that value based on the person that's logged inside the application. So we use the authentication fields so that we can grab that user's ID. And same as before, I recommend maybe just leave it as a text field for now so that you can see how that user's ID is fed into that field or how it's populating automatically. And then once you see that it's working correctly, come back to this data page and make this field hidden. All right, we have log type. So log type, I'm also going to turn this into a dropdown. And let's just add select log type. Delete the value, and let's add a few options here. So we can have maybe a phone conversation with the customer. We can have an email conversation, and let's just maybe we had a demo, so we'll add Zoom here. For my comments, I'm going to turn this into a text area so that we can actually see what we're typing inside a larger viewing area. And for document, this is just going to be a file type so that we can attach a document, and you can specify the size of the document that you can add into the database. Hit next one more time, and I don't really need to see a confirmation message when I hit submit. Because I'm going to be looking at all of those logs directly underneath my submission form, I just want the form to refresh. So as soon as I submit the form, I'm going to be able to see that data directly underneath the form. So there's no need for the confirmation message. We're going to hit finish, and that's our 8th data page. We have one more left to build. And the last data page that I want to create is how to display those logs inside of a viewing area. Okay, so this data page, as you can see, I'm not really placing it in the right folder, so let me just make sure I move this into my shared folder. Sorry about that. Let me click move, select this folder, because everyone is going to be able to add a log. All right, let me close the folder here. Let me just make sure I build the next one in the right folder. So I'm going to just collapse it and expand it. And now let's build our final data page. Go down to reports. And for this one, I'm going to choose list and hit next. This needs to be based on the logs table. That's my data source, since all the logs are stored inside that table. And let's call this view logs. Again, I'm going to use the same style, restrict access to everyone, hit next. No need for a search form because I just want to be able to display the results. So we're going to go with the filtering of data, hit next. And the last data page here also needs to receive the contact ID. In order to display the right logs, we need to be able to filter the logs based on the contact. So we hit next. And hopefully by now you know how to set this up. You go into the Advanced tab, you receive the value externally, call it the same exact way, which is CID, and make sure that the value is required. We're going to hit next. Now, what information do you want to display on the results page? So let's have who submitted the comment. Let's have date added, log type, comment, and any attachment that was added with that log. Okay, we're going to hit next. Not going to make any editing options in the results page. Everything is just going to be read only. So here's my results page. I want this to be renamed to maybe employee name or just very simple employee, just a little bit cleaner. Date added, log type, comment, and document. So document, I'm going to have a link here to download the file, but I can also do a custom link text. I can say maybe download file. We're going to hit next. Let's display 24 records per page, but I want to sort my logs based on the date field, and I want to show the most recent first in that order. We're going to hit next. No need for a details page. I'm displaying all of the information on the results page, so there's really no need for a details view. And when you're done, we're going to hit finish. And that is the very last data page needed for this entire application. Let me expand all of my folders. So just to give you a quick premise, the quick workflow of this application, managers log in, they can add new employees, they can manage existing employees. Employees and managers can both log in to be able to add new contacts. Managers have the ability to manage contacts. Employees have the ability to view their own contacts along with being able to update their profile. And then both the user groups are going to be able to see the details of the contact, add logs, and view the history of all the logs that have been added by both the managers or employees. So obviously with me explaining how to build each of these interfaces, it takes a little bit of time because I'm explaining it, but Caspio's platform is all about rapid application development. If I wasn't explaining anything, I could literally build this in less than 10 minutes. And hopefully with enough practice, even you yourself can build these applications quickly. Now granted, this may not be a very robust application, but at least now you know the process and how easy it is to go about building applications in Caspio using a point-and-click tool. I hope that I see you in the next video. We're going to put everything together. We're going to deploy each one of these data pages into Weebly, and you will see how all the functionality comes together via the web. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope I see you in the next one. Take care.